back to keeping keeping oneself in these boxes. Like that's the language we
Uh-huh.
use about it. I might call it feeling domesticated by culture's ideas of who we should be, but boxes look of all kinds. So I wonder if you could speak to your journey around experiencing your own boxes and how you have liberated yourself from them.
Well, I grew up with a pretty clear set of boxes.
Mm-hmm.
I was intended to live in a little house not very far from my parents with a white picket fence and raise 2.5 children, and yeah, not have a very big experience of life.
Mm-hmm.
And pretty early I knew that wasn't going to work for me. And then early I went to college in a really my first experience at college was a very restrictive small Christian school that my older brother had gone to. Why I decided that was a good idea, I have no idea right now, except that it allowed me to work for Helen. I started in August or September. By Christmas I was asked to leave because my grade point average and my social um, interaction in the world was not to their liking. And it
Oh,
was the first time I had really actually bucked authority.
ooh,
Yeah,
tell me more.
because I was a good girl. I was a really good girl. I was a straight A student practically in high school. I almost flunked algebra because it didn't make any sense to me. I took it over, got a tutor, and ended up dating the tutor. And but anyway, um,
Oh, don't stop.
I was I was a really good girl, and I tried to do everything really perfectly.
Yes.
I had a real attachment to perfection.
Okay.
So going to this school and going, oh, I don't even care what you think. What you think makes no sense to me. And I am not actually living in your rules. And it was the first time that that rose loudly enough for me to go, huh, okay, these rules don't apply to me.
What?
And so I didn't go to classes if I didn't want to. I dated a Black basketball player because I wanted to.
Uh-huh.
And I worked off campus because I could. I had a car and I befriended one of the first gay guys I ever knew who was getting unbelievable amounts of grief in his dorm. And
Oh.
he would hide in my dorm room while I went to work. And then we'd go out for snacks. And it was like, oh, these things are not done. Well, I wanted to do them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is radical because I grew up a good girl too, and it took me a long time, and I'm still work on my perfection thing. How did you make that shift? Like what made that voice rise? And how did you hear it and have the courage to act on it?
I think it was a combination of things. And one was that in my family of origin, thank God, and with Helen's help, I was taught to think for myself.
Okay.
And this was a very small, very conservative, very rule driven environment.
Hmm.
And the Christian overlay was not the same one that I'd been raised in. I was raised a Presbyterian. This was Church of Christ, of all bizarre things for me. And I would go to chapel in the morning, which was a requirement right after breakfast before classes. And the things they were saying were like, I don't believe that. And just that lack of ability to swallow it.
Yeah.
I could not drink their Kool Aid.
Hmm.
And that gave rise to oh, there might be a lot of Kool Aid. What other Kool Aid am I drinking?
Wow.
And then also the freedom of leaving the confines of my biological family and getting out with a car, with the freedom, with I had a Pakistani roommate my first year who had never been in America before. And it was like, oh,
Wow.
my job is to educate her. And so we had fun.
Uh-huh.
And that became why I was at college, was to have a lot of fun.
Oh, wow. So, so different than what was maybe prescribed or thought would happen when you went to
Yeah.
school. Yeah.
Yeah. And I didn't care about getting straight A's there.
Hmm.
Their authority somehow, it didn't matter to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yet I did actually want to be educated. So when they threw me out, a whole series of things happened, but my parents basically pulled their financial support of me. And so if I was going to get educated, I had to figure out another way. And I did, because I wanted it. And so I went to the Rotary Club in my small town and asked for a scholarship, and they paid my tuition. And I got another job besides my job at the bookstore to be able to afford to have an apartment. And I left my parents in the dust, as it were,
Uh-huh.
and struck out on my own. And so it was just about backbone at that point. It's like I was determined.
Mm-hmm.
And the response, I think, of my biological family to me not playing by the rules was shame and blame and guilt tripping. And I was just like, no, not having that.
Wow. So that's actually probably part of Helen's influence because it feels like somehow you were able to crack through and not keep collapsing into those expectations. Something
Mm,
rose in you.
right. Because I actually had a blueprint for another way.
Right.
Yeah, Helen was educated. She ran her own business. She was influential in her community. It's like, I want that for myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And yet I still did it in the context of growing up to become a school teacher. That's what my parents expected.
Mm-hmm.
And I just held that. It's really strange to look at that now.
Yeah. So you held that, meaning you followed that path, but you just did it your way. You
Right.
became a school teacher.
I did. I went to, yeah, I got my degree in education, and
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So it's interesting to hear this part of your story because I know some, but I didn't realize how quickly you flipped, how quickly you were able to go from compliant good girl to basically rebel inner authority, doing this my way, even
Hmm.
with shame, because I feel like often, at least in my journey, shame and guilt trips have gotten so rooted in my psyche that it doesn't even matter what anyone's saying anymore. I have it grilled in that if I draw the lines, I'm going to get in trouble.